How about this, SJW? Since you're so passionate about this, why don't you start a change.org movement and get them to get signatures? We'll get the small group of Game Wild people to sign it, and then we'll bring it to Project M into the big store or whatever the name of that company is.
Hey,
We'll
maybe I
there.
will. Maybe I will, man. That'll be how I make my name in the video game industry. I got Nintendo to support
you are
esports.
what is that saying? You are what makes the change in this
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
There you go. Make the change. All right, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of Game Wild. We are getting into the holidays, so let's get into the holiday spirit. Thanksgiving is this week, so it's gaming. That's what it's all about, because Black Friday's coming up. We're gonna have some deals that I'm gonna post on the Facebook page. So guys, if you're not on our Facebook group, join our Facebook group, join our Discord. We show deals wherever we can find them. We also try to get ahead of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X releases. So if you are still one of the sad few people, and I'm looking at you, SJW, that do not have...
Stop making me feel bad, man.
Yet,
I'm so sad.
we are still trying to get you one by posting when they'll be out. But
I have gone on every single time I see a post anywhere, on Twitter, from you in the Facebook group, everywhere. I am on that site at that time. I have it in my cart, and then nope, nothing. It's sold out.
Well, it's tough, but it's there. So check it out. And then also, obviously, rate, review us, do all that fun stuff on the podcast app that you're listening to us. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, ring that bell so you know when the next episode of Game Wild comes out. And hopefully down the road, we'll also be doing minor segments as well that aren't part of the podcast on YouTube. We have been talking about doing some unboxing of playing cards and things like that. So stick around, you never know.
So the question of the week,
go for it.
So and this will actually segue into something that we found too, is in regards to news. So I'm very very excited to talk about this, anyways. But so the question of the week is, what is the weirdest video game system that you've ever seen, or the weirdest console idea, I guess?
Oh, actually, I can say that I think I have the number one.
Okay, what do you got?
And it's real.
I hope it's real.
Well, you said idea.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, all right. So when I say idea, it's really just something that at least was released and then might have failed or whatever.
All right. So my pick is the only Atari Jaguar. Now, why the Atari Jaguar?
Yeah. What? Why do you think that's a weird system?
Look at the controller, bro. Have you ever seen the controller of the Atari Jaguar? It is one of the funkiest things. It looks like you can make a phone call on it because it has a number pad. And then it has 3 buttons a la the Sega Genesis. I mean, that controller alone makes it probably one of the weirdest systems that were ever placed on the market.
It's a very bulky controller.
It's like if that's the Xbox controller before the Xbox controller.
That was, yeah. And we thought the original Xbox controller was bad. This is, I will say it is basically like a number pad, which is kind of weird. But then, I mean, that was Atari Jaguar. That's some historical. I mean, that's like the beginning of gaming, right? And the fact that it was towards the beginning of gaming. And the picture on the box was pretty sick.
The Atari Jaguar came out in the mid-90s, so the beginning of gaming was really in the 70s, and then if you want to talk about home consoling, that was the 80s. So this is in the 90s. This released North America.
I thought Jaguar released in the late 80s.
Nope, the Atari Jaguar released in North America. On November 23rd, 1993. That is the earliest release of the system. It was then released in other countries almost a year to 6 months after the American release.
So actually, all right. So, okay. So I'm thinking, when I think Atari, I think the time period in my head, like I don't picture Atari anywhere outside the 70s and 80s. But I forget that the Jaguar was actually released that late. Because I just looked up the original. So the Atari 2600, which was like the beginning of gaming, that was released in 1977. So I always do that. Like, because Atari didn't exist after that, right? Like,
yeah, and let's talk about it real quick in regards to the lasting lifespan of the system. So if you think about the Xbox and the PlayStation, who have probably, and I guess you could throw Nintendo in too, have had systems that have had the longest lifespans in the history of video gaming, the Atari Jaguar lasted until 1996, which is a whopping 3 years.
Wow. and actually, considering it was in the 90s, that's when consoles started to last a little bit longer than they would have otherwise back in the 70s and 80s. Because there was in the 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of random consoles coming out. Like, a lot of random consoles.
All right. Let's do a little bit of fun facts here, because I have the Jaguar wiki page up here.
Oh, boy.
And let's play a game. Let's play Can SJW answer these questions?
All right, I got Google
discontinued. Nope. In 1996, it was discontinued. How many units of the system were sold?
Oh God.
And I'll be like 100% like, okay, you can go with we'll do over under.
Okay. I'm gonna say
500,000 consoles over under sold for the lifespan. Lifespan.
Under. Yeah, under.
Under.
Yeah.
You are correct.
Yeah.
I
was gonna say
under. It sold under 250,000. So
wow. See, I was gonna say about 100. I do remember.
I think they sold 250,000 Xbox Ones and PlayStation 5s in that day.
In
that one day.
Yeah, in one day. I think so. Was that around the same time where the video game industry started having problems, or no? That was the late 80s that started, right?
That was the late 80s, and I froze again. So
yeah,
I'm gonna have to fix my cam now.
Yeah.
My cam now.
Hey, we got your audio. That's what matters. Okay.
That's really what matters. No one wants to look at me, anyways. All right, here it is. What was the best-selling game on the Atari Jaguar? Was it Doom or Alien versus Predator?
Oh, guaranteed, because I'm pretty sure Alien versus Predator came out in the movies back then. It was Alien versus Predator.
Ding, 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 ding. That is correct.
Yeah.
How many Alien versus Predators were sold? Was it 25,000 units, 50,000 units, 85,000 units, or 110,000 units?
110.
Wrong.
Really?
85,000 units.
I was close. It was still
I had to throw a weird one in because I was like, oh shit, 85,000 units is not like. So I'll have to throw like one more weird one in.
Well, I figured it was going to be high because, so when you think about it, if there was less than 250,000 consoles sold, that was 1 in every 3 consoles bought that game, which makes sense because if you, like back then, like, so I was referring to kind of like the breakdown of the video game market back then, which involved E.T. being released, that video game that flopped like terribly. And back then, everybody was about, okay, let's take a movie. We're going to take that name and really use it to our advantage to make money in a video game. And Alien vs. Predator made sense, too. I haven't really read up on Alien vs. Predator on the Atari Jaguar, but...
okay. Now, the final question.
Yeah.
They were going to have a predecessor to the Atari Jaguar, but it got canceled. It was going to be another animal. Was it going to be called...
I heard this before.
Is it going to be called the Atari Gorilla, the Atari Panther, or the Atari Cheetah?
I've definitely heard this before. I want to say Atari...
Once again, your choices are Gorilla, Panther, or Cheetah.
I'm going to go with Cheetah.
Incorrect.
Panther?
The Atari Panther was going to be released.
I should have went with my first thought. They always say go with the first thing that comes into your mind.
So there is your game show fix for the week, everybody.
We should do that more often.
We should.
Yeah,
we should do a little bit with it when we can. A little bit of fun facts there for everyone.
So, all right. So here's my weird ones. It's kind of like a twofer here. So my first thought was to actually go. So I'm thinking the weird route, right? So my first thought was to go with Apple Pippin, but that's not necessarily weird per se. That was just Apple with its shit attempt at getting into the video game console market. If you guys don't know, Apple did technically have a video game console. It was the Apple Pippin, and it failed miserably. So,
unlike basketball legend Scottie Pippen,
who arguably might have still failed miserably in some other aspects, but
there is a sandwich commercial that if you look it up on YouTube, it's pretty interesting. I would definitely YouTube Scottie Pippen sandwiches and see what happens.
It's so funny thinking of his face now versus like when he first started playing basketball. The guy's got a pierced nose and like colored hair and all this crap.
It's Dennis Rodman.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's Dennis Rodman. Oh no, Scottie Pippen. Wow, I just completely. So when I said you could argue he failed miserably, I was thinking about Dennis Rodman as well. So never mind, that's Rodman. Same team. I was close.
Not a sports podcast, everybody. Not a sports podcast. Although we do play fantasy football together.
Yes. So we have. I don't know if you guys. This is not it, but I don't know if you remember ColecoVision. So Coleco also made another console called Telstar Arcade. This thing had a gun. This is the only reason I remember it. It literally has a gun sticking out of the console. Like it has and I think there's something else on it too. It's like a gear shift or something like that. I'm not sure. There's there's things sticking out of the console that involve being a part of the controller for the system. And it just looks stupid. It's the stupidest thing ever. And I remember seeing a picture of this one time and thinking, like, there's no way this was actually a console. But it was. I guarantee it.
It's totally a console.
It's totally a console. And actually, let me look this up quick because I want to see kind of... I want to give you guys a better idea of what the picture is. Or, like, what it looks like. Okay. All right, so... Okay, cool. I was worried. All right, it is Coleco Telstar, by the way. It's Telstar Arcade. And all right, so first off, it looks like a radio on one side. I totally forgot about this. It has two knobs and like these random like old school switches. And it's a triangle. It looks like a triangle. On one side is a radio. On one side is a literal revolver sticking out that you can put into the console. So
I think you should post a picture of this on YouTube.
It's like, actually, well, what I'll do is I'm going to drag the picture. Here we go. I'm going to drag the picture over for you guys so you guys can see it. And so if you guys are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see a picture. But
I'm looking at this thing, and it is an amalgamation of, like, if we wanted to put every type of controller possible in a game, we have it.
in a game console, no less, not even a game.
In a game console, sorry.
And on the other side of the triangle, there is a steering wheel with I guess a gear shifter. Yeah. So, yeah.
Pull that revolver out of it too. So
you can definitely. It's almost like they're like, hey, we want you to be able to hold this gun somewhere. We're gonna make that spot the system itself. So wow. So yeah, that's my weird one, but I still think it's funny.
Weighing in everybody at a whopping 4 pounds.
I will say, I am very surprised. Speaking of the Pippin, I am surprised that Apple still has not really had a full-fledged like console in the war.
You want to know what? I think it's because they're smart, right? They're like, okay, we don't really need to go into this, but what we can do is we can charge people to play games on our stuff. Mm-hmm. So you can pay $5 a month to play the Apple Arcade.
Yeah.
And you get access to all different types of games. So, I mean, realistically, they don't need to invest in that situation because they kind of have a market share of the gaming world with mobile gaming, where you can pay $5 a month to play any game in their library, and they have tons of games, and some of them are actually pretty good.
So for everybody wondering how the heck we came out with that question, it's because we saw an article, which apparently you saw before me, Joe, because you already knew what I was talking about. Apparently, BudLight released a system that also cools your beer. And it's called the BL6. Is this actually
the coolest
real?
console ever.
It's currently going for more than $1,000 at auction. So they're apparently really hard to get. And yeah, the coolest. It literally says on the console. It says the coolest with an asterisk next to coolest console ever. So this is actually a thing.
It says it comes with 16 gigs of memory and 6 games, including Tekken 7 and Soul Calibur. It has built-in Asus projector. It has the form factor of a 6-pack of beer.
Wait, this has... Hold on. This is next level. I didn't realize it had a projector built into the system. You're telling me this thing is literally... This is like every man's dream. This is... I'm going to go tailgate with a stand-up projection screen, and I'm going to bring my 6-pack of BudLight, and my 6-pack of BudLight literally projects the video game for me, cools my beer and my friend's beer, and allows me to play Tekken. Right. This is amazing. Whoever made this is a genius. This is great. And
somebody at BudLight.
And it even says, what's the slogan? It's a marvel of engineering. Because isn't that like one of their things in the commercial, like it's a marvel or it's a true American genius, or what the hell is what's the catch line?
Yeah, that was like back in the like late 2000s, I think, the Genius, or the late 90s, and that's like genius.
And so the controller, so first off, there's 4 beers in it that are like placeholders. It looks like I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're like big beers.
Yeah. And then the controllers not only fit inside the console, so it's a carrying case. They look like Sega Genesis controllers, kind of. Or Super Nintendo, I guess you could argue.
Nintendo
with joysticks.
Super Nintendo would be more apt because Sega Genesis had 3 buttons.
Yes, yeah, and then this it's got 2 joysticks too. So
yeah,
it's a very simple regular controller. But honestly, I want to buy it. Like, it doesn't even really play a lot of games, but I want to buy it. Like, this looks amazing. So I don't know how you get it, because it says it's apparently really hard to get. And it's currently going for more than $1,000 at auction. I imagine that's probably eBay. So, but there's that. That's a thing. If you want it, you can buy it. It exists. Whew. Gotta love it.
There you go. Absolutely. So, if you're into beer and gaming, we have a system for you, everybody.
So, another thing that I found, which I wasn't aware of this until looking a little bit earlier. But I'm very happy that I found it, to be honest with you. The Last of Us, man. The Last of Us. So actually, before we get... Joe, what are you watching right now, as far as like shows are concerned?
So, let's see. Obviously, The Mandalorian's back, so I've been watching The Mandalorian on Disney+. Excellent show, still. I don't care what stupid people say on Twitter. It's fine.
I like Mandalorian.
I'll watch it for other people than just one person who makes stupid tweets. Let's see. So, The Mandalorian, The British Bake Off on Netflix as well.
The British Okay.
Listen, I'm a cook person.
I've seen those shows are actually pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, those cooking shows.
If you follow my Facebook, my Instagram, and all that stuff, you'll see that really my stuff isn't about gaming at all for the most part. It's about food that I make. So that's pretty much why any of my stuff is interesting. It's not about gaming. It's about the food that I make. So you get to peer into my world a little bit there. So the British Bake Off, I watched, and I told you about it, We Are Champions, which is a docu-series on Netflix that came out yesterday, or Friday, I should say, because today's Saturday. We're recording on a Saturday. And it is about interesting competitions throughout the world.
Okay.
I'll give you a couple just to...
Oh, this is the one you were just telling me about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, the first one, if you guys have ever watched Ozzy Man reviews, there's...
I love him.
There's one where he goes and he reviews people basically tossing themselves down a hill after a block of cheese or a roll of cheese. That's what the first episode is about. Okay, the first episode is about that
Great intro to the show.
that challenge. Okay. The next episode is about jalapeno, not jalapeno, but like hot pepper eating contest. So there's this huge contest in Carolina, and this guy creates and crossbreeds peppers. He's actually the father of the Carolina Reaper. So he created the Carolina Reaper and creates these contests. And I'm going to tell you something. It's worth the watch just to see these people endure the pain, because they also they talk about the actual competition, and then they show you the competition. So you actually get to see the competition happen. So it's worth it. It's not just they talk about it. They talk about competition, and they interview certain people that are a part of that competition.
Yeah.
And then just one more random one for you: dog dancing.
Dog dancing.
Competitive dog dancing. Absolutely.
Listen, I've always said, man, if there's something you want to do in this world or you're interested in, I promise you there are other people that are interested in doing it that you can find, especially online
there's
nowadays.
an international dog dancing contest that happens every year in Europe, and they go and they deal with that. So that was interesting. There's only like 6 episodes, I think. And they're about like 30 to 40 minutes. It's definitely worth the watch. Yo-yo competition is one of them. Frog jumping.
Man, I miss yo-yos. When you were younger, did you have like one of those brain yo-yos and stuff? You remember?
I had
those?
the one that lit up. You know when you threw it.
Yeah, that's the brain. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they had like mechanical yo-yos and stuff. Oh my god,
Yeah.
the butterfly yo-yos.
So it's stuff like that I'm watching right now. It's weird stuff on Netflix. And
all right, well that was not. I mean, Mandalorian kind of falls in the category, but the reason I ask is because I will. So you were a Game of Thrones fan as well, right?
Yep.
I love Game of Thrones. I am, if this comes out, especially anything HBO releases is like so good. I love HBO and Showtime. Like those two producers of shows right now are absolutely amazing, especially HBO. The Last of Us. The Last of Us, baby. This is like one of the iconic games of the last 10 years. The Last of Us 2 obviously came out as well, so there's plenty of storyline to deal with here, and this supposedly will be eventually coming to HBO. Right now, the people involved are Craig Mazin, who is the creator of Chernobyl. Did you see Chernobyl?
I didn't. My wife watched it though, but
it's very good. It's very, very good. And like I was hesitant because I'm like, oh, it's just like a historical fictional documentary type deal, and I don't know if I'm gonna love this. But it was so good. It was very, very entertaining and still remained pretty historically accurate, right? On top of that, the game creator Neil Druckmann is going to be involved, Naughty Dog. And Game of Thrones executive producer Carolyn Strauss. If that's not a lineup of people, I don't know what is. Because if you have Game of Thrones creator, executive producer, HBO themselves, creator of Chernobyl, and obviously Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann involved. That's amazing. That is some good stuff there. So I am super, super excited for The Last of Us. If you guys haven't played The Last of Us, if you guys are actually listening to this podcast and have not played The Last of Us, what is wrong with you? You need to play this game. It is wrong with you. It's like by far, it probably at this point, it's top 10 games of all time. It's in the last 10 years, it's probably, if not the best, definitely top 3. Which is hard because there's been a lot of, like, you got The Witcher and stuff to compete with. You got Last of Us. There's a lot of good games that have come out in the last 10 years. But, yeah, this game, you have to check it out. And they're working with Sony, obviously, as well. So, this is going to be good stuff. I mean, Joe, you're going to watch this, right, if this comes out on HBO?
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely watch this.
Hey, Joe.
I'll definitely watch this.
Have you played?
You can see all my stuff there.
Well, yeah, I can see our stuff, but have you played The Last of Us?
The mess. Yes.
Oh, you have? Okay, cool. I was gonna get so disappointed if you haven't at least played it. I haven't. I beat the first one.
I haven't played the second one.
Yeah, I played the second one. I haven't beaten it though, so it's so good. It's so good. It's like playing a book, but it's got awesome awesome gameplay as well, as far as
I'm
like
gonna move my
shooter
camera
and
up
stuff.
too. We're gonna play this all up. We're gonna get it up so you can't see the mess that the full mess but now you
It's all
can't
right.
see me.
Hey, you know what? You got a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox in there, so as far as I'm concerned, you get a get out of jail free card. You can just blame it on having those boxes laying around.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
at this point, I'm so desperate for a PlayStation or an Xbox, I want to just buy those boxes behind you. So not the system, just the box, just to make it look like I have them. So
Bring it on, sucker.
yeah, so Last of Us coming out, pretty excited about that, and we'll definitely be tuning in to check that out. So, but
100%.
what I really want to talk about, and I think this is where we'll have some interesting discussion today too. GameStop, Joe. GameStop.
GameStop.
So
Stop it.
But so I'm gonna read. So this is the headline of the article that we found, which is former Chewy CEO. So Chewy, not the granola bar, FYI. We're talking about Chewy, the pet company. Former Chewy CEO tries to push GameStop to become the Amazon of the video game industry, and we all know what Amazon does, and we all know what that means if that were the case. So. Without really digging too deep into it yet, Joe, what are your thoughts with reading a headline like this as far as GameStop is concerned? I mean, obviously we all know that GameStop hasn't been doing too hot lately. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a digital world now, right? We're all in a digital world, so GameStop's gonna have trouble, man. They're gonna have trouble. I buy my games digitally. I think most people do now. I know you're one of the few that really like to get the feel of the actual, but I'll buy it digitally unless it's like a really good deal and it's worth waiting for. That's another thing too. Like, I don't really pre-order anything anymore.
I pre-ordered Cyberpunk, but
so I haven't pre-ordered Cyberpunk yet. But now that I think it's on its final, like,
it's actually gonna come out. Yeah,
and then it's actually gonna come out, I might actually do something with it this time. So there's a couple of different deals. Best Buy has like $10 gift card with the pre-order, stuff like that, and I'm gonna probably buy it on the Xbox, the Series X, because I mean, talking about it, I've had the both systems for over a week now. I've played both systems. However, I played more of the PlayStation actually than the Xbox, and the reason being is because they actually have games that are new.
Yeah.
Right.
Miles
so
Morales.
I told you last week about Bugsnax. Miles Morales, excellent game. Get it. It continues the Spider-Man story. It really sets up Spider-Man 2, the next game that they'll be making at some point. So definitely worth it if you want to continue the storyline. Really, honestly, the only game that I own currently that I believe is Xbox Series X enhanced is Borderlands 3, so I've been playing that.
Like a physical copy you have?
No, I have the digital copy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, okay. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, so I've been playing some of the expansions that I haven't had a chance to play yet. Yeah, so there's that. So yeah.
So I guess my whole thing with the digital too is, and I think I mentioned this before, I really am surprised that there's no significant benefit right now of buying digital. Like I don't see why it's not less money. Like, I mean, sometimes you get like $5 off or something like that, but I don't see why it's not like half the price by now. Like, it really makes sense. If you're going to cut all of your distribution costs, you're going to cut all of your manufacturing costs, and it's just the software. Maybe not half, but maybe like if video games are going to be $70, I don't see any reason why digital copies shouldn't be $50. Like, that to me is incentive to actually want to buy digital then. But if I'm still going to pay $65 or $70 for digital, it's like, why not just, I'd rather just own it than pay for digital, you know? So
yeah.
I don't know. It seems weird, but you're right. I agree. Everything is making that shift towards digital or subscription based or whatever, and all these things changing in 2020. And this Chewy CEO say, okay, we want you to be like Amazon. Well, I don't know if that actually solves their problem, because now GameStop, sure, you might get a bit of an increase in sales just because you change to being more like Amazon and less brick and mortar, but now you're just competing with Amazon and everybody else that's already doing that. I mean, you're a little behind the 8 ball there, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's just, I don't know. Video game retail is just so difficult. The margins are so tight. You have to think of different ways to do it. Their bread and butter is really their used games, their pre-owned games, and with digital being a bigger sell now,
Hmm.
people aren't buying physical copies. There's less games going around. That also hurts too because that's where their margins are really made, are in the pre-owned stuff. So
And just to put it in perspective for anybody listening, so this is how bad GameStop has done it. And let me preface all of this by saying, video games are doing crazy well. Like,
yes.
video games are off the charts. Probably, like, if you're looking for stuff to invest in video games, invest in publishers, invest in developers. Something like Tencent, which owns Riot Games and Activision and all that. Like, invest in that stuff because video games are off the charts crazy right now. But GameStop, the seller of video games, since basically video games have been around. I don't know when GameStop started, probably in the early 90s or something like that, but it used to be Electronic Boutique and all that stuff.
Yep.
In the last decade, GameStop stock has gone down 40%, which
Yep.
is a huge shift, especially considering video games are doing better. And the biggest thing that stuck out to me was that in 2000, where is it? In 2011, they did 9.5 billion in that fiscal year for sales. Which was right before the last console cycle. So that was before the PS4 came out then, right? So in 2019, I'm going to make sure I'm reading this right, they did 6.4 billion. So that means in 8 years, with video games doing better, probably year over year over year, leading up until now, they actually have a 33% decrease in fiscal year sales. That is terrible. And, I mean, that's why, I mean, we see it all the time. I think right when COVID hit, I don't know if you remember, but I remember reading articles where GameStop closed a crap ton of stores. Obviously, you got a lot of other brick and mortar in general that are closing stores, so brick and mortar is kind of taking a hit regardless. But there are still companies like Walmart that are succeeding with brick and mortar. There are still companies that brick and mortar makes sense. Now, I brought this up to you a little bit earlier. We were talking before we started the podcast. I really, really, really think that they need some sort of competitive advantage. And right now, I think that is collectible video games. I think that is old school video games. Because I know me personally, if I think of, all right, where am I going to get a regular Nintendo game or a Super Nintendo game? Well, yeah, I could go online, eBay or something like that. But if I want to go somewhere right now and pick that up, which honestly, the fact that you're even collecting video games in the first place, I feel like most people do want to go and get it right away. Similar to like buying trading cards, which I've been doing lately. Like I want to go and get it right away and open the packs. I think of Toy Vault, which is a local provider that's down the street at the Warwick Mall, and I like there's no big name competitor in the world that does that stuff. There's probably plenty of big websites. There's probably one that I don't even know about. So if you guys are listening,
it's called
and know,
eBay.
Okay, well, yeah, there's eBay, but like, no, I just mean like because I did buy one video game recently. It was Final Fantasy, the original one, from an online website, but it didn't seem like it was this worldwide thing. It was just like Ed's Games or something like that, and it was just they just sold a bunch of old games. So it seems like very individual people. Now, if GameStop did something like that, even if they did move to an Amazon-based model where it is primarily online, I think then they offer something that other people don't because you can buy emulated copies of those games, but if people are buying those games in the first place, they probably want a physical copy. Yep. There's probably a certain percentage. I don't know what the math is, but I'd say like 70% of the people that want to play those games in the first place want to own them and have them for a collectible purpose. So, I don't know. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that as far as like collectible games are concerned, and how GameStop kind of carves out a niche for itself?
I just don't think I don't think that's gonna work for them. I really don't. I don't think that the market's gonna hold for them to sell collectibles, collectible video games, and make a significant profit off of them. I just don't see it.
Why though? I mean, what do you think the problem is for GameStop?
I think it's a mixture of it being corporate, and I think a lot of collectors, I should say, like to go to places where it's kind of got the local feel in that it's like just like a small proprietor trying to make a living off of doing this stuff, and not some big box style store that's like, hey, we're trying to make a profit off of this, so we're gonna do everything we can to maximize it.
So you think
Where
it doesn't like fit with their brand?
Yeah, I don't think it does. I don't
Yeah.
think GameStop, even if they were to rebrand themselves, I still don't think it would succeed as well. And that's why you see these local mom and pop shops that sell the collectible games are the ones that will survive, because when I ran a video game store, we were like the second best video game store kind of thing, right? So we weren't the big piece. We were connected to a rental place, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
So, and we sold a lot of vintage games and stuff like that, and we always felt like, kind of like a small place. We didn't really feel like a big corporate owned, at least at the beginning when I first started there. It kind of changed after they were purchased by another company, but the idea was people could play games. We had video game stations set up everywhere so people could play video games, try out games. That was like one of the big things. Try them before you buy them, that
Yeah.
type of thing. Where I don't even think GameStop does anything like that. They have demo stations set up, but we actually just had like literal systems just set up. We had a couple from the company set up that were for demoing, but like we really just had, you wanted to play this game, sure, try it out, stuff like that. So it had a different feel to it than GameStop has, and I think that's why those places survive and thrive, because it's a local, hey, let's bullshit about video games, let's talk about stuff, let's have fun. Where I think
Yeah.
GameStop is focused on sales, margins, getting people to buy warranties, things like that, which
It's all
I
corporate.
don't think
Yeah.
and I don't think
And I
smaller places are as focused on that stuff. I'm sure they have their own things, but I think that there's a little bit more heart put into it.
no, and I kind of agree. I kind of agree, right? Because when you have that retro collector mentality, that is kind of what you are looking for. And I definitely, it would be hard for people, especially with all the flack that GameStop is catching already for how it treats its employees, which is probably also a result of them doing really bad from a business perspective. Like, obviously, you can't treat your employees well if you're not doing well. Well, generally speaking, anyways.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I think that it would be hard for them to kind of change that view of them as a company. And I mean, I'm just going to read this quote from the article, which it feels really bad saying this, but it is what it is. And let me make sure I just want to make sure I find this quote. Yep. So GameStop sells video games and consoles and has been bearishly compared to Blockbuster. And man, I'll tell you, if it comes to a point where GameStop closes, that is just going to be, that's the turning point. I think that's when we all know it is 100% made the shift towards digital. I think I already saw numbers when I was doing research previously, like we've gone over that 51% hump of people buying digital versus physical copies.
Yep.
So I think we're already there. But if GameStop actually closes, then that's a big deal. There's one Blockbuster left. It's like the block, which apparently you can sleep at now. I don't know. I think we did that in a podcast, didn't we? I don't know. Unless I just read the article, you can actually rent out a room at that Blockbuster and stay at that Blockbuster.
There you go.
It's crazy, but yeah. So I mean, that's the world we live in. GameStop might be closing, or it's not yet, but it's going down that path for sure. So, but next on the chopping block today. Nintendo. I mean, Joe, listen. I've told you a million times how much I love Nintendo. The nostalgic feeling they give you, and just everything about the company for the most part, I like. I think they do a great job at designing games. I think that their games and their IPs are IPs for a reason. Like, people know Nintendo because of their 5 core IPs, right? But man, what are your thoughts, before we get into actually what this article is about, what are your thoughts on just like game mods in general, and whether or not, like, as an example, Elder Scrolls, I know that gets a ton of support for people modding the game. Are you for, against, neutral? What's your take on game mods?
I'm for it. I'm
Yeah.
for game mods. I think it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love the Steam Workshop. I think the
Oh
Steam
yeah.
Workshop is amazing, and it's collaboration. But you know what else it does? It helps grow the community. Um, so I harken back to a game on Steam called Darkest Dungeon.
Hmm.
Such a fun game. It's like a roguelike RPG where you collect characters and you go through these dark dungeons and fight. But the coolest and fun part of it that kind of kept it alive for me was the fact that you could get new characters to play with, and they were all
Yeah.
modded characters that people created. They actually designed it. I actually tried to design one once, and was pretty. I did a pretty good job, I thought. Um, but it was really not too different. It was more of a color mod for one of the characters. So, but it was all done in Photoshop. You took the character base and I just changed the colors out, and I was about 95% successful. There were a couple of movements that didn't work properly. But outside of that, I mean, I had her new color scheme. It was the Gravedigger. She was like, I had like a Joker style look to her, so her face was painted like the Joker. She
Oh,
had
that's pretty
all
cool.
different color. Yeah, I'll have to see if I still have it. I can take a screenshot. I'll send it to you. You can post it on the site. But yeah, but that was just like a mod I created. I never sent it out because it never successfully worked 100%, and I just didn't have time to focus on it
Hmm.
enough. But and it was just a color palette. It was not like I was changing the actual way the person played. But there are people who do that, and it's amazing. And I've read where someone was so successful that the company actually brought them on for DLC purposes,
Yep.
and they worked on DLC. So it grows a community, it brings people together.
I've heard those stories
But
before too, all the time.
but I
Yeah.
think it has to be these small companies that need to keep games alive and support from the community. That way they can continue to make money off of it,
Hmm.
and be able to make, like, currently, if you want to look at Red Hook, which is a company who developed Darkest Dungeon, they're currently working on the second Darkest Dungeon. They have a bunch of DLC out. They're also working on a board game that I think is on Kickstarter right now for the game. I mean,
Hmm.
but it's like small games like that. Those are the ones that kind of embrace the whole modding situation and are okay with it, because it keeps your game alive, really.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of people who are against it and who feel like you're killing the base of the game, but
No.
you want to know what? You're just adding fun and flair to the game, and why does that hurt?
Yeah, and so to get back to what Nintendo actually is doing and why we're talking about modding right now. So basically, Nintendo shut down a Super Smash Melee tournament that was supposed to happen next month. The tournament is called the Big House, and it's a tournament that has happened for quite some time. If you guys are familiar with Evo being the largest fighting tournament on the planet, basically, the Big House isn't quite that big, no pun intended, but it is a rather big Melee tournament that most people look forward to, and Nintendo basically gave them a cease and desist. And it went to a cease and desist order officially because the Big House originally refused to shut down the tournament based on what Nintendo was saying. Then they issued the order, and then they kind of had to at that point because Nintendo is Nintendo and they can strong arm whoever they want. So I went to Twitter for this too, and I was kind of going back and forth on somebody who had originally posted this as a tweet. And so here's my take on it. So essentially, what this is, also just basically Nintendo is objecting to organizers using what's called Slippy. Slippy is another mod similar to, if you guys are familiar with Melee, Project M. Project M is just a mod for Melee to tweak the character's skills and stats. So similar to like how Riot releases a patch update every so often for League of Legends to balance things, Melee, being an old game, never had patch updates or anything like that, right? So Project M was a way for people to tweak all the characters so that everything was balanced. Whereas the original game, if you just play the stock game, there's clearly characters that are just better than other characters, right?
Sure.
That's how games were back then. Like, you buy an old school Mortal Kombat, one of the characters is just better than all the rest, okay? So, now people have mods to make things better. Slippy, specifically, wasn't necessarily to balance things. It was specifically to allow online play for Melee. And something, again, that Melee did not have when it was first released. So, Nintendo basically objected to them using Slippy to play online. And again, just to put it in perspective, this came out in 2001 on GameCube, just to give you guys an idea. And, you know, Big House released a statement, etc., and why they can't, you know, continue. But basically, I'm just going to read this real quick to give you guys an idea. Nintendo has a complicated relationship with both the Smash community and the larger world of video games, largely because of its aggressive copyright enforcement. The company hasn't actually sold Melee for GameCube for over a decade. Keep that in. But this game is still being played all the time.
Yeah, sure.
In 2013, it ordered EVO, which I just mentioned, the world's largest fighting game tournament, to shut down a planned Melee event before quickly actually reversing its decision. So it's not a surprising move for the company, but its approach to copyright has hindered taking a long-running event online at a time when there's... And that's the other interesting part. At a time when there's really no other freaking option but to play this game online. Which is what also blows my mind. Because how else are people supposed to play this game right now? So, Nintendo did... Alright, so here's my take on it. I think Nintendo... Alright, actually, before I say this, Joe, what games, besides Melee, can you think of that Nintendo has a hyper-competitive, like, esports scene for?
I don't think there is one that I'm aware of.
I can't think of one either.
Melee is like the biggest thing because it's like their fighting game.
Yeah, and the only thing that
maybe Mario Kart.
Oh, Mario Kart is actually you can play online too. The new ones.
Yeah. So maybe Mario Kart.
But I don't think there's really like an esports scene for it. If it is, it's probably very underground.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: even Melee is considered underground because of how Nintendo treats this copyright enforcement, right?
Right, now, and of course with mods it makes it a little bit more undergroundish, yeah.
And the other thing that comes to my mind with Nintendo competitive is like speedrunning Mario and stuff like that. That's probably about as officially competitive as you can get. But that's not necessarily like an esport in the sense of an esport. Right. That's just like competing for the sense of I just want to compete. Competing. So yeah, just like I'm bored and I want to get a better time than this other guy. So I think what this shows me is that Nintendo doesn't want to get involved with competitive esports, and I don't really know why. Like, it seems like they're very anti, we don't want our Nintendo games or our Nintendo IPs to have anything to do with esports.
Well, I don't think that's the case. I just don't think they want it modded, right? I think they just want... if
that's what they're saying on the surface.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, let's ask the question, right? Is there any competitive games out there that Nintendo has that isn't modded? So like, are there Smash Brother Ultimate tournaments or whatever that don't have mods that people compete in?
There are.
And are those shut down?
They're not shut down because
well, I mean, there you go.
Legally they can't at that point. Actually, I think they can because of how copyright sucks. But then there's
but what I'm saying though is that your basic question was that they don't want to have a competitive scene. Well, if they didn't want to have a competitive scene, they'd shut everything down and be like, don't do this. And they're not. They're only doing it to things that defeat the purpose of the original intent of the game, which is if you mod it, if you change the game, you are defacing the original intent of the game. So that's their problem. That's what they're fighting up against.
So what you're saying makes sense. Like, I agree. But here's my thought is, yeah, just because they're letting these tournaments happen... doesn't mean they're supporting that. Like, they have never openly really pushed the esport. Like, all right, let's take an example. Riot. Obviously, League of Legends is the most competitive game ever.
I can't. You can't bring those games up.
Though, I'm going to use Legends of Runeterra. Legends of Runeterra. How is it? It's literally a brand new game with like no following.
But the point is that it's based off of a game that has a following that is humongous.
And Melee is based off of all of Nintendo's characters, which is humongous.
And they also have a great following as well.
That's my point, though.
Well, all right, then you tell me if people start modding Legends of Runeterra or start modding League of Legends and Riot doesn't step in and say, "Whoa, don't do that." What are you gonna say?
Riot would step in and say something.
I
know they
know.
would.
So
but they
go.
support
I mean, you're contradicting
the
yourself.
competitive community. I think basically what I'm saying is they're
supporting a competitive community because that's how they make their money. Nintendo doesn't need to support a competitive community to make money. You were talking about 2 free games that are based off of you spending money.
But basically what we're implying then, if we agree with your thought process, is Nintendo doesn't care about the community or the competitive community.
No, I think Nintendo doesn't have to worry as much about the competitive community because their systems are based off of what we've talked about in the past, nostalgia and
yeah, from a money-making perspective, yeah, but why don't they care? That's what it's like. Nintendo is such a good, nostalgic, feel-good company. How are you going to be that company and then basically sit there and just never give a shit about your competitive community? We're not going to put money into it. We're not going to support it. We're going to hinder anybody who tries to push it forward, because that's all Project M and that stuff is just people trying to push the competitive Nintendo community forward, and Nintendo going no.
But by modifying it.
I get that, and they've done it without modifying it too.
It's because competition is not Nintendo's bag.
Competitive
nature. It's just not.
Why?
I mean,
why?
I don't know, because they're geared towards family, and a competition can get pretty nasty. And so I think that's, if you look at it, if you really think about it, there are 2 possible games that you could think of that are competitive nature games, in that Mario Kart and Smash Brothers, and that's it. And everything else, I mean, yeah, Mario Party's competitive, but it's like fun competitive and stuff like that. Like, it's not viciousness. I mean, granted.
Well, I mean, I played some pretty vicious Mario Kart games.
Yeah, that's true too. But don't you drop that blue shell, you bastard.
I just think if we get to a point. So, with all that said, if we get to a point where Nintendo does get past this and finally say, "Listen, we're gonna support this." Maybe they buy Project M and they just start releasing updates to the game themselves, whatever it might be. If they finally get on board and support the competitive environment for Nintendo, I think that's going to be a huge boost forward for esports as a whole.
Well, how about this, SJW? Since you're so passionate about this, why don't you start a change.org movement and get them to get signatures? We'll get the small group of Game Wild people to sign it, and then we'll bring it to Project M into the big store or whatever the name of that company is.
Hey, maybe I will, man. That'll be how I make my name in the video game industry. I got Nintendo to support esports.
What is that saying? You are what makes the change in this world.
Yeah.
There you go. Make the change. Make the change.
All right.
With that being said, let's go into Ruffhouse deals, everybody. So, this week we have a couple more free games on the Epic Game Store available until November 26th. They are available now. The first one was pretty cool. It's called The World Next Door. A mix of lightning-fast puzzle battles, powerful storytelling, and immersive visual novel elements. The World Next Door follows June, a rebellious teen trapped in a parallel realm inhabited by magical creatures who must find her way home before time runs out. Then we have Elite Dangerous. Take control of your own starship in a cutthroat galaxy. Elite Dangerous is the definitive, massively multiplayer space epic, bringing gaming's original open-world adventure to the modern generation with an evolving narrative in the entirety of the Milky Way. And then finally, guys, Black Friday is going to be upon us. We have an IGN article which gives you the best Black Friday deals on Amazon. So please check that out in the notes. And then, we will be dropping whatever I can find for, Black Friday deals and special deals on our Facebook group as I find them, including when PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X's will be available for purchase yet again.
Yeah, honestly,
and now,
I think I just want to say with this Black Friday stuff or this IGN link, I'm probably going to buy a bunch of these.
They have like a buy 2 get 1 free kind of deal going on and stuff like that. Some of the deals are already active, so please check out the article because it's not just happening on Friday.
Like Gran Turismo Sport, $10. God of War, $10. Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition, $10. Last of Us original, $10. These are all amazing games. $10 is really, really good. So
There you go. And now let's go to the game releases.
alrighty then. All right, so not a whole lot actually heading into the holiday week and stuff like that. Yeah, everybody's
Not
kind
a surprise.
everybody's gearing up for that. So first up, and a lot of these are just like offshoots. So real quick, the first few: World of Warcraft Shadowlands expansion, 23rd, coming out to a World of Warcraft near you. Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid saga continues for Switch on November 24th. If you guys haven't checked out the Netflix show, or sorry, YouTube, actually,
it is on Netflix.
Yeah.
It was originally a YouTube original show.
Yeah.
That got bought by Netflix. And,
What he said.
Yeah. There you go.
It's actually pretty good. It's speaking of nostalgia with Nintendo. It's if you guys watched Karate Kid when you were younger, this is just gonna hit you right in the feels for nostalgia. So that's good stuff on that. But there's a game for it. It's exactly what you think it would be for the Switch on November 24th. Football Manager 2021, which we were talking earlier. I feel like we announced this before. I think it might have been for consoles and stuff. This is just for PC on November 24th. And you manage a football organization. Just Dance 2021, the historic dance game that has been around for quite some time now. I remember when that first came out, and you had to it came with a dance pad for the PlayStation 2, and you had to plug it into the PS2, and it was that's so crazy to think of. PS5 and Xbox Series X coming out on November 24th. Out of Space Couch Edition for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch on November 25th. So this is interesting. You're about to move into a house in space, and it's like a strategy game where you have to get rid of all the alien invasions from your house. And it's very cartoony looking. It's a top-down view, kind of like Among Us, to be honest with you. Kind of has that similar space station top-down view look. And yeah, so that's coming out on the 25th as well. Vigor for PS4 on the 25th. This is actually free to play. So if you guys want to check this out, go for it. It's a shooter looter. Honestly, I always want to get into more detail with stuff like that, but honestly, there's so many shooter looters nowadays. It's a shooter looter. It's the same thing. They're all the same thing. It's just different design, different environments, different weapons, different items. But it's shooter looter. Then we got Made of Skur, which also sounds familiar. I think this is just coming out for the Switch on the 26th.
Yeah, so I think this came out on other systems last week or a week or two ago.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. This is more of a scary story type deal. It's a first person survival horror. There's so many genres nowadays. I try to remember which one each one is, but so yeah, first person survival horror game. If you're into that kind of stuff, definitely buy this one up. Then we have War Thunder for PS5, which is a vehicular combat multiplayer game. So basically, you drive tanks, you drive planes, and you shoot them up. It's very what's that other one? What's that, Ace Combat? You ever play that game?
No, I was never into flying fighter simulators.
Yeah, yep.
Like that.
It's kind of it combines a flying fighter simulator like that, but also you have tanks and stuff you can use too. So it's a little bit of the best of both worlds there. Nice. And then finally, last but not least, When the Past Was Around, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. This says, what did we decide C was again? To be.
Oh, to be.
Not.
Oh man, now I forgot my.
Why is this not just TBD? Why can't this be TB? Isn't TBD the normal acronym for this? What the heck, man? Well, it's to be determined. But this is a really weird looking game. It's got a
to be confirmed.
Confirmed. That's what it was. This is an adventure point and click puzzle game. So it's got some kind of drawn graphics where you're in a house and you have to figure out objectives and what you have to do. It's based on a love story and stuff as well. So very slow paced, relaxing type puzzle game if you're into that stuff. But yeah, that's it for this week. Not a whole lot. And as we gear up towards Black Friday here, should be an interesting week next week, especially with everything happening, with things changing with COVID, lockdowns and stuff like that. So maybe we'll be locked down for Christmas this year. Who knows? So.
No. Well, Anyways, let's bring everyone down a minute. Yeah, great. Thanks.
And we're just gonna end there on a low note.
Yeah, low note this time. So thank you everyone for watching. Subscribe, ring the bell, do all that fun stuff, and we will catch you next week on another edition of Game Wild. Peace out.
Later, everybody.